28-year-old former ballerina Ashley Benefield ran to her neighbor's house on the evening of September 27, 2020. She said she had been attacked. She also said she shot her attacker, a man named Doug, her 58-year-old husband. Ashley and Doug were in the middle of a nasty custody battle over their young daughter, a battle that included serious allegations by Ashley, including being poisoned by her husband, and allegations by Doug that Ashley was trying to prevent him from seeing his daughter. At the same time there was talk of reconciliation, there was a big court date coming up, a hearing that never happened because Ashley killed Doug. Ashley is now charged with murder and claims self-defense and battered spouse syndrome. She took the stand in her own defense, telling her story publicly for the very first time, describing a relationship filled with domestic violence, which ended when she says she was cornered by Doug, who lunged at her. We are live from Manatee County, Florida, with week number 2 in the Black Swan murder trial.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for joining us here on Closing Arguments. We're talking about the case of the so-called Black Swan, Ashley Benefield, former swimsuit model, former ballerina, also the former wife of the victim in this case. Former because he's dead. She's been charged with his murder, but she is saying, and she said it very clearly on the witness stand, I am the victim. I am the victim. So once that happens, this becomes a much different case. She has taken the stand, she has testified. This jury has to look at her, scrutinize her testimony. Does it make sense? Was she credible? Does it line up with the other evidence in the case? But the theme of her testimony was very clear. I am the victim. I'm the victim of domestic violence, and I was the victim the night I shot and killed Doug. I was defending myself. This is a self-defense case, just like the case of Marcia Thompson, which preceded this trial right here on Court TV. She said, I am the victim. And the jury agreed, and she was found not guilty. So in a self-defense case, the jury now is weighing two completely different versions of what happens in a killing. Like, what is it? Like, it's not who did it, it's what is it? And you have defendants charged with murder proclaiming their innocence by proclaiming that they are the victims. So when you look at a self-defense case and you extrapolate it and you look at the other side of the equation, you have to look at the victims. And if you believe that the defendant is the victim and the victim's not the victim, that raises the question of, did he deserve to die? It's called justifiable homicide. It's a homicide, but it's justified under the circumstances, which means the person deserved to die. It's a justifiable killing. Their actions caused the situation. Their actions caused the reaction of the defendant having to defend themselves. So whenever I look at a self-defense case, I look at both sides of the equation, not just, okay, on the one hand, she's saying she's the victim, but on the other hand, did he deserve to die? Did he deserve to die in that moment? In that moment. And it's not an easy call for jurors. We've seen these cases go both ways, but it's up to the jury to decide. These are tough cases. You know, in the who done it, everyone's conceding that there's a murder taking place. It's just a matter of who did it. But here, you kind of know what happened, but you don't know everything that happened, and you don't necessarily know the motivation of the killer. Is the motivation to defend themselves or to take someone out? Okay, another big day down in Florida. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft, who's joining us live from outside the courthouse in Manatee County, Florida. Kelly, great to see you. Okay, so I always wonder where we are in all of this. So the defense rested their case today.
Good evening to you, Vinnie. Yes, and usually there's a little bit more buildup to the defense counsel resting the case, but he actually wanted to, or talked about calling one more witness, but then he told the judge that he only could have that witness appear via Zoom tomorrow, sometime after 2 p.m. And so the judge and him were going back and forth as to the possibility of that. And then the defense counsel just ended up resting his case. Why don't we go ahead and listen to when he did do that.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Benefield has no further witnesses, and we rest on her behalf.
And so there you have it, Vinnie. So at the end, he was talking about, this is Mr. Taylor, defense counsel for Ashley Benefield, the defendant in this case. He was talking about possibly calling someone who could talk about the DNA swabs, the DNA analyst, and possibly be able to talk about that Ashley Benefield had some DNA on her from Doug Benefield, because he is saying, Mr. Taylor is saying, that this would be exculpatory evidence showing that Doug Benefield came at Ashley Benefield. But in the end, he ended up saying, we're just going to rest our case, so not calling that witness tomorrow via Zoom.
So where does that leave us in the case now? Are we going to have a rebuttal case? And when do we expect the closing arguments?
Vinnie, yes, the state is going to present a rebuttal case. So at the end of the day today, after defense counsel rested, then the state did indicate that it was going to put forth a rebuttal case and potentially going to be calling Eva Benefield. So this is Doug Benefield's daughter. So going to recall her to the stand. And in particular, we got a little bit of an insight into what might be asked. The state said that they're going to ask her about some photographs, going to show some photographs, and ask when those particular photographs were taken.
Hey,
and then, yeah, Vinnie, yes, in closing arguments, probably tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, so we could be in a verdict watch tomorrow night. We'll be in a verdict watch right here at this time, 24 hours from now. Okay, let's talk about who the defense did call, though. Mental health experts seem to be a big focus of their case after the testimony of Ashley last week.
And Vinnie, this took up a lot of the day on Friday, whether or not this particular domestic violence expert would be called to the stand today. And yes, so this domestic violence expert was called. His name, Bruce Ferris. And so he was talking about different ways that a person is abused, and defense counsel was putting forth different hypotheticals and even mentioning some incidents that we have heard the alleged victim in this case, Doug Benefield, admitted to in prior hearings. So for instance, that shooting the gun into the ceiling, also hitting the dog, or an incident that took place with the family pet. And so he was asked on direct examination by defense counsel about the cycle of abuse and how an abused person may act. Let's listen to that testimony.
Tell me if this would be consistent with someone who suffers from abuse. Sending texts that are conciliatory with friendly emojis, accompanying the abuser during child time sharing ventures, acting deferential and subservient in joint therapy sessions, but decisively different in individual sessions, fearful of the abuser finding out the victim described him as controlling, manipulative, and abusive, and being exposed to threats, intimidation, pushing, holding down, humiliating, cursing. Would that be consistent with a victim of domestic violence?
Without a doubt. These are, again, techniques of compliance, not wanting to poke the bear, walking on eggshells, trying to minimize harm to themselves and their children. They'll put up a front. They don't want anyone to know, and they don't want their abuser to be angry by them disclosing. So, yes.
And defense counsel also recalled a state witness, Jason Quintal, and he talked about his counseling sessions with Doug and Ashley Benefield. Let's listen to some of that testimony.
Did you reach any conclusions with respect to Douglas Benefield?
Yes.
Would you tell us what those were?
Based on the conversations with both Ashley and Doug occurred as someone who was domineering, and the terminology that I would use at times would be super controlling. He was very dedicated to wanting the relationship to work. He was very interested, despite conversations with some of the disparaging things that Ashley had said to him. He was very much still wanting this to work, and their plans were to move to Maryland.
Now, in the cross-examination of this witness, the state got across to the jurors that many of his assessments were based on what Ashley Benefield had told him, and that he had only met with Doug Benefield 2 times, Vinnie. So the state obviously trying to establish that really the reasons he's coming to these conclusions is based on what Ashley Benefield was telling him.
Another important witness, a forensic pathologist, took the stand today, which, again, the defense does have a witness to all of this, the defendant herself, but when a defendant testifies, you want things that can corroborate that testimony. What did we get from the forensic pathologist today?
Vinnie, one of the biggest things that the forensic pathologist said on the stand, this is Dr. Liu, she talked about finding that Ashley Benefield's account of what took place on that day was very consistent with her findings. She reviewed the autopsy report of Doug Benefield, and she also at one time was, during the testimony today, got up and was doing a lot of demonstrations. And at one time, the defense counsel had one of his law clerks come up and be the model, if you will, and she was demonstrating how a bullet may have gone through Doug Benefield's leg. And at that time, a lot of people in the gallery stood up, as well as the jurors stood up to watch this demonstration. But why don't we go ahead and listen to Dr. Liu talking about how the bullets were and the trajectory of those bullets.
Now, you've told us, Dr. Liu, about the shock to the spinal cord from the shot that entered the chest.
Yes, going from front to back and right to left.
Would that have, in your opinion, affected Mr. Benefield's ability to stand?
Yes, as I explained earlier, it would cause a spinal cord shock, causing paralysis of the legs and causing Mr. Benefield to fall.
And in falling, would it be consistent that his legs would go up in the air almost as if he slipped on a banana peel?
Yes, that would be consistent.
And Detective Warren, he also was on the stand today for defense counsel. And this got into a lot of this back and forth in regard to the DNA witness that defense counsel wanted to call to the stand. And what defense counsel was doing with this witness, Mr. Warren, is he was asking him if before he got an arrest warrant for Ashley Benefield, if he had consulted with the medical examiner on this case. And he eventually said something like he didn't recall, and then he said no. But why don't we go ahead and listen to defense counsel. This is him then talking about the importance of this DNA testimony and wanting to bring some more information in about this DNA.
So the court recalls that Detective Warren sent the swabs to the lab. Megan Dorvac testified that she swabbed Miss Benefield. I asked her why. She said because it would show who had touched her. The court should recall, you can consult your notes, Your Honor, Miss Benefield testified that Douglas Benefield grabbed her by the hand and spun her around as she tried to leave the house. This report corroborates that to the extent of, I think, 720,000 times more likely. We think it's an essential component of our defense.
And Vinnie, the judge ended up not allowing that in, and that's when defense counsel said that he wanted to call the person who did the report to the stand, or at least via Zoom, tomorrow, but not until 2 o'clock. And then after that, he ended up deciding just to rest and to not end up calling that witness.
All right, big day tomorrow. Kelly Craft joining us live from the courthouse. We will speak tomorrow night, perhaps during a verdict watch. All right, I want to get some reaction now. Special guest joining us, Doug Benefield's cousin and family spokesperson, Tommy Benefield, is with us. Tommy, thanks for joining us tonight. Want to get your reaction. Do you think that Ashley Benefield was walking on eggshells in this relationship, despite the fact that they were estranged and not living together?
We don't agree she was walking on eggshells, and the proof is that all the cases that she filed against Doug, all the different times that she tried to prevent Doug from having access to Emerson, in spite of the fact that Judge Moreland found that he should have time sharing, that he should be legally responsible for her medical conditions and her medical decisions, Ashley never stopped, even up until a few months before the killing, of trying to separate Doug from their daughter, and all the cases were disproved every time.
What did you think of the testimony of Dr. Quintal?
Dr. Quintal's testimony, especially on cross-examination, turned out to be an issue, not for us, but for the defense, because he admitted on cross-examination that he met with Ashley multiple times, that his real focus was trauma resolution, and that he only met with Doug twice, and he only met with the two of them twice. The predominance of his information came directly from Ashley. He admitted not being a diagnostic counselor, but just being a trauma resolution counselor. So while he portrayed Doug one way, everyone who knew him, except for how he's being portrayed in this courtroom, would disagree with the statements he made about Doug.
How about Dr. Liu's testimony that from her perspective, everything was very consistent with Ashley's story of what happened inside the bedroom when your cousin Doug was shot and killed?
Well, her testimony in particular, where she stuck to the evidence and the facts, unfortunately did not in any way substantiate Ashley's story. In particular, what she's showing right there is the grazing wound that she said came from below Doug's arm, above Doug's arm. And that shot, she later said, went down the hallway, which was a high to low. Both the defense's ballistics expert said it was from high to low, and Dr. Liu said it was from below to above. She also, in particular, the ballistics expert, showed today in cross-examination, just like the medical examiner last week, that although they say front to back, that it was a side shot, chest high, same level with Doug. And Dr. Liu said that that bullet, as it went through hit his right lower rib, went through his right lower lung, and grazed or shocked his spinal cord before going through the left lung and hitting the rib on the left side. It was a side shot. It disabled him. She said, used the word paralysis, Dr. Liu did, and he wouldn't have been able to lunge or keep going after Ashley, as was her story. The other thing that was evident in the ballistics today was that it was clear that Ashley was across the room, more than 6 feet away from Doug when she took the shots, and that she was moving from right to left. The defense's experts said that. The two bullets who missed Doug, those gave a very clear definition of where she was standing when she shot.
And after all this time, can you believe that tomorrow the jury may get this case?
Yes, sir, we believe it's been a very good, very quick presentation. In particular, Mr. Taylor, the defense attorney, has pushed the boundaries as much as he's possible to do. He's been called inappropriate and unprofessional by the judge while the jury's out of the room on 2 occasions just in the few days of this trial. We believe The facts show one situation that Doug was walking in the room and Ashley shot him and kept shooting until the gun jammed. And her story, especially her testimony and trying to demonstrate how the hands went of, as she called him, his ninja movements, were just possibly not true. Medical examiner said he was shot from the right side. Their own defense expert said he was shot from the right side. We're very happy to get Eva on the stand tomorrow. We're going to show the judge allowed pictures that are going to come out tomorrow that show Ashley with a droopy eyelid. That's not my words. That's her own attorney's words prior to the events of the shooting. And we're going to see that Doug did not look, as they presented him, as this bulked up person, either in the autopsy pictures or in the pictures of him 1 month prior to the shooting. We're happy to go to trial. We're happy to go to get all the facts out. The closing arguments tomorrow afternoon are very important. Everyone knows that. And late this afternoon, the judge went through all of the instructions to the jury, so we got to hear all of that. We're very comfortable with what that's going to be. Yes, tomorrow evening we could be on a verdict watch. Certainly by Thursday, we'll be on a verdict watch to see how this goes.
All right. Tommy Benefield, thank you for your time tonight. I know this has been a tough time for your family, but we'll speak again. Thank you so much. When we come back, we'll bring in our think tank, get their take on these allegations of domestic violence, plus coming up next hour.
Christine Ricci's husband admitted to an affair in 2018. 3 years later, he was stabbed to death by her. Is there a connection? Tonight, we investigate.
This week,
the biggest moments in the Black Swan murder trial, plus a voice for victims in the tragic story of a 6-year-old's death and a father now facing sentencing.
opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV. Sunday, August 11th, the season finale of Accomplice to Murder.
The horrors they uncovered are horrors not even inflicted upon prisoners of war.
Accomplice to Murder with Vinnie Politan. Season finale Sunday, August 11th, 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
He wasn't anything like I thought he was. I feel like I had made a really big mistake marrying him. It was like I was just living in this nightmare. I never knew what I was going to get.
Ashley Benefield claims she's the victim in all of this. She is the victim. And not just that day when she shot and killed her estranged husband, Doug, but throughout their relationship, she was the victim of domestic violence. Take a listen.
A friend of his had come to town to visit, and we went out to dinner with him. And when we went to leave, Doug had had a little too much to drink, and so I said that I would drive home. And he instantly got really mad at me. He was offended. He started screaming at me, and it continued all the way home. And when we got inside, I told him that he was drunk and he just needed to go to bed. And that really set him off. And he tried to flip over the dining room table. He threw a chair at me. And he kept screaming at me until he stopped, and then he apologized. And he said it would never happen again. He said he was really sorry. And after service, after everyone was leaving, we talked to the pastor in the lobby area in front. And at one point, Doug stormed off. And by the time I caught up with him, I was in the parking lot. And he started cussing at me, calling me names. And when we got in the truck, he accused me of having a thing for the pastor, and he said I was a slut and a whore, and he screamed at me all the way home. He would call it a fit of rage. Sometimes it was as simple as him just yelling and screaming at me or cussing at me, calling me names. Other times he would throw things or break things or smash things. He would come at me like he was going to hit me. He told me I was lucky that he punched walls instead of me. We were having an argument, and he came at me like he was going to hit me. And our dog, Sully, jumped up in between us, and he punched him in the face so hard that he knocked him out. I just remember screaming because I thought he had killed him. I was always walking on eggshells, trying to do the right things. Because if I said the wrong thing, he would get mad at me. And so I always tried to do it right. If I wore the wrong thing, he would call me a whore or a slut. I feel like I couldn't do anything right. We were having an argument, and it started getting really out of hand. He pulled a gun out, and he was like waving it around. And then he threw it at me, and it hit the wall behind me, and punched a hole in the wall. And when I went to run to try to leave, he pulled the gun out and held it to his head. He said that he was going to blow his brains out, and I was going to have to watch him. And he pulled the trigger and he shot a hole in the ceiling in the kitchen.
How compelling is this testimony? What impact will it have on the jury? Is she a victim? Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Al Wunsch III, joining us from parts unknown. Also, criminal defense attorney Darnell Crossland and family law attorney Jennifer Brandt. Great to see everyone. Okay, Al, I'll begin with you. Does she fit the role of victim in all of this? Because that's the story she was telling on the witness stand.
Well, it's not fair just to say whether or not she was a victim, because obviously there was some problems going on between the two of them. Obviously, this was not a match made in heaven, and that there were genuine issues that the two of them had. The question is whether or not it raises it to a level that she should have executed him. I mean, no state in this union of ours has a death penalty for harassment. And everything she has talked about is harassment. Everything she has mentioned is harassment, which is a petty disorderly persons offense. It is punishable up to 3 months in jail and or a fine of $500. And she executed him for that. And that's where I have a problem on this. There's no doubt that she is upset about the way this relationship went. There was a 30-something year difference between the two of them, that there were all issues with regards to him being jealous of her and things along those lines. Fine. It doesn't lend itself to cold murder. And that's what happened here. Homicide doesn't work here, not for harassment.
Darnell, Al has a problem. Do you have a problem tonight with this?
Well, I think Al probably is the best person to speak on who's a victim or not, since he's absolutely looks like he's in witness protection and wherever he is right now. So he can probably share a lot of insight on that. But when I look at the testimony of hers and I think of Marshall Thompson, I see some difference, right? And so it becomes this idea of like, what woman has suffered the most in this domestic violence space? As viewers, that's what we start to see. We can't say they don't deserve their defense. But I mean, when you go back historically from the burning the bed, now we're shooting husbands, or we're not burning beds anymore. However, I think the question that we have to ask ourselves is was she compelling? I think she was very compelling. I think she suffered. I think one of the best parts that she has is when he shot the gun in the air, when they threw the gun at her. I mean, that sounds like a person who fits the description of everything she describes. But I have a problem with, even with that, go to the police. How many times did you call the police? That's what you do. But when it boiled down to that moment when she pulled the trigger, was she in danger at that moment? Was she doing a Bruce Lee to get him off of her and pull the gun out? You can't just say it's been going on forever, so I found an opportunity, let me execute him, like Al said. It has to be at that moment where you're defending yourself, at that moment, not from the months of abuse, but that moment. And I don't think they're showing that a lot.
Jennifer Brandt, you're on the front lines in family court, day in and day out. Does she present as a classic DV, domestic violence victim?
Well, I agree with everything that's been said before with between Al and Darnell. She had a troubled marriage for sure, and she seems credible in what she's saying about how he acted, but she wasn't with him at the time. She didn't have to be with him. She had been away from him. What he was doing in the house with her, trying to help her move, I mean, if she was so afraid of him and he was such a bad guy, what's he doing there helping her move? And should he have been there even to start with? I mean, she had already gotten away from him. And usually what we see in domestic violence cases, when you're acting in self-defense, it's a history of abuse over and over again until someone can't take it anymore, and then they act. But she had already gotten away from him. They were already in litigation. They were in court fighting over their child. The court, by the way, didn't believe her allegations. And now she was coming up on another hearing where she knew it was going to be, she was going to present an injunction, try to prevent him, saying he was abusive. And, you know, she didn't want him around the child for sure. But call the police, like Darnell said, if she's in a situation in the home when she's moving that she's scared. Do something. Don't pull out a gun and shoot him. I mean, I think we all agree that it just seems at that moment she wasn't, yeah, maybe he got angry with her, but why was he there to begin with? She should have called the police right away if she didn't want him in the house and get him out. That's what you do.
All right, looks like the ghost of Al Wunsch wants to get in on this.
Yes, well, because let's look at it this way. She sent the mother and the away while they were home. Man, why didn't she have someone with her? Why didn't she have a friend with her while they were doing boxing and putting things together for the trip up to Maryland? Why didn't she have the mother stay? Why wasn't there someone there that was a buffer between them? If she's so frightened of this man, why was she alone with him? Perfect question that was brought forth by the state in this case, and also what's been mentioned, you know, by with my, you know, cohorts here. Both of them are saying the same thing. You know, does it lend itself to the point where she shot this man 3 times with a .45 caliber handgun? No, it doesn't add up.
Well, it's amazing that the three of you are adding up and seemingly. I almost want to end the show right now because everyone is together, but we'll see what happens. We've got more to get to. We're going to talk about Doug's first wife, Renee, and there was testimony and evidence relative to Doug and Renee's marriage that may open a few eyes here, may change a few minds. We'll talk about that next.
The house for multiple years was Doug, his longtime wife Renee, and their daughter Eva. That's prior to Renee's death in 2015, December of 2015.
Okay. So Renee died in 2015. Do you know how she died?
Yes, ma'am. She died of a undiagnosed heart ailment, cardiac arrest.
So Doug Benefield was married for years. They had the daughter Eva, and his prior wife Renee had children from another relationship as well. She died in 2015. It was 9 months later that he met Ashley Benefield. Ashley Benefield, while she's living in the home, it's the same home that Renee had lived in, found some things, and it was a message from Renee to Doug. Okay, from Renee. So this is Doug's prior wife's message to Doug. Take a listen.
I had been going through and kind of cleaning and organizing. And I was going through a bunch of old devices like phones and iPads. And I found the texting conversation between Doug and Renee, his previous wife.
I'm going to read this to you and let me know if it's accurate.
Okay.
I was deeply disappointed that you distorted the truth about who you really were when I married you. I loved you, though finding out you weren't really what you pretended to be. You kicking me so hard on New Year's Eve on our honeymoon because you were having trouble functioning in certain areas. You holding a gun to your head twice in my home that I opened to you with my children that still love you, having to sell everything down to my wedding ring. Finding out you were on Viagra, which all of you had to do was tell me, you know I wouldn't care. Trying to film us making love on our honeymoon. Finding out that you wore eye pencil on and on. I loved you so much I didn't care. That's why I was shocked to think you would take pictures of me without asking. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So what's the jury going to do with this information, Darnell Crossan? Will they not like Doug Benefield because he's wearing eyeliner, attempting to secretly film him and his wife together? He's taking Viagra, not owning up to it, putting a gun to his head twice, kicking his new wife on their honeymoon because he couldn't perform?
Yeah, this is a tough one. And what makes it really hard is the fact that this is coming in text messages from some conversation that was found in some phone. So typically when we try to bring that stuff in, there's a lot of challenges in terms of authenticity and et cetera. So I salute them for being able to overcome that and at least get the evidence in, because that's the hard part. Now, once the evidence is in, the question is, what's the jury going to do with that? It seems like if Doug's first wife is complaining that he couldn't perform properly, and now he goes and marries a younger girl, which requires probably greater performance, they're going to probably look at him as making dumb decisions, which just probably frustrated him even more. Now, kicking this former wife so hard that she almost passed out, more and more I hear, the more and more I'm sold. And I think the jury will be sold as well.
Jennifer Brandt, what are your thoughts? This is a prior wife who, after that honeymoon, stayed with him for a long, long time until she passed away.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, Vinny. She didn't file for divorce as far as we know. She didn't file any domestic violence actions against him as far as we know, or that's been presented to the court. So yeah, maybe they didn't have a happy marriage, and we don't know where this text message came into play, or the context of it, or what he said, or the exchanges that went on beyond this one message. I agree, it's damaging. It makes him look like a really bad guy, but it doesn't necessarily justify him getting shot in the situation as we talked about before. And if the jury can separate that out, what they may perceive about him or think, the fact that he even married a woman 30 years younger and all these other things that have come out about him, if they can separate that out from the fact that, she pulled a gun out when she's, saying, oh, we're going to reconcile and we're going to be together and move together. But really behind the scenes, she's saying, I'm filing an injunction against you and trying to prevent you from seeing the child. I think that is what the jury really needs to pay attention to, is, what was happening at that time, and maybe not all this extraneous stuff that they're trying to bring in to make him look just like he was a terrible person.
Al, there was some more testimony about Renee. And this is Doug and Ashley communicating with each other about Renee. Take a listen.
I see Renee as Eva's mom, not my wife. It is strange, but...
Can you pull that back up?
He said it is strange, but there is no emotional connection. I said, well, I'm glad. I just wish I could see it that way.
And you said, I'm glad. I wish I could see it that way. Were you talking about being jealous of his relationship with Renee?
I guess you could put it that way.
Okay, Al. Ashley's jealous of the relationship that Doug had with Renee. What does that mean?
Okay. Well, here's, if we had Doug around, maybe he could explain all of this, but unfortunately we don't, because he had 3 bullets put into him for harassment. But under the circumstances, he's trying to reassure her, okay, that, look, you know what, I've moved on from that relationship. I'm concentrating on you. My situation now is, I think of, that's Renee's the mother, okay, not my wife. because I'm focused on you and I want to work out with you and I want this to work with you. I don't know how that helps her. I mean, it seems to me that he was, very anxious to show her he was there for her in many different ways. And, look, he may have been a jerk. He may have been a horrendous person in a lot of different ways, but he doesn't deserve to be executed.
Darnell, do you think the jury can make that distinction, which is an important one, right? If they don't like Doug Benefield and they believe that he abused his first wife, and they believe that gives Ashley more credibility about what she is telling them about her relationship with him, can the jury distinguish between that and the moment that his life was taken?
That's my thing. I think foundationally, I think we've seen that the defense has laid the foundation. They've laid, to me, a firm foundation for us as jurors to say that guy was abusive. He had some problems with his former relation, with his current relationship, and he's trouble. And we can't put it past him. We can't find beyond a reasonable doubt that she wasn't in fear for her life. Now, I think they just need to tie it up a little bit to the moment. So all the foundations laid, and then they can just say on this particular day, she felt like she was going to suffer more of what she always suffers at 6 o'clock. Whenever he comes in, she gets beat. And they need to show that. And if they can't show that, they may have
They're going to rely on the warrior stance, Darnell. It's all about the warrior stance.